Hi everyone and welcome to this week's video. This week's video is a podcast interview with Ric Rodriguez. Ric is an SEO consultant at the tech giant Yext. He's also an international keynote speaker and most recently a co-author of the book called Mastering In-House SEO. Ric's a really cool guy that I've known for a while now. He's really well known and respected in the space. A lot of questions, a lot of information shared in this podcast, so make sure you watch until the end. And if you haven't already, then press the subscribe button below. How are you doing at the moment? How's working at home in general for you?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I'm enjoying being at home for once. I'm never really at home that often. So I mean, I think like this is the longest time I've been in one country for about the last year, which is pretty weird, if I'm honest. Feels weird,
Yeah,
but
yeah. So, how do you think that your team's like adapting so far? I suppose like you've just had to adapt. I know that already you've got already like Yext is like an international company, so there's obviously an office in every. I think you said that there's an office in every city in Europe. There's one in the UK, US, all around America and stuff like that. So, like, how's everyone doing? Like, are you still collaborating the same way, or how's it changed?
so I think we all kind of, I mean, when I say we all, I think everyone feels the same in terms of sort of death by Zoom, but um, I think we've done really well. We're a business that, we go and talk to people a lot. We like to spend time with our clients and our customers. And that's a really big part of who we are. That being said, I think we translated to online really, really well. We're still having great conversations with people. We're still able to do what we do. And even just internally, I actually get to speak to I feel like I get to speak to my colleagues a lot more. We're often on the road so much that now we're all in one place. We are collaborating on lots of really cool projects that maybe we didn't have the time to do before, or we didn't have the ability to do before. But the working from home and working together in this online world has definitely been productive.
Oh, good. I mean, like, I suppose, like, it kind of, I'd say that it's kind of streamlines meetings in effect. So, like, there's less kind of the chit chat. You're there to do like a certain job, like, you've got a certain thing written down to discuss. You kind of want to be in and out as quickly as possible. So, yeah, I guess there's like pros and cons to both, but at the same time, I guess the office atmosphere, you can't really beat that, when you're bumping into people and there's like social events and stuff like that, I suppose. I guess you can kind of miss that, but I think in the future there'd be a lot more flexible working options. So like maybe more time working at home, or more like flexi time, or whatever you call it. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything goes. So
Yeah.
for those of you who don't already know who you are, so people who are outside of the SEO circle, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? So like your background in digital marketing and kind of the things that you're doing now, and then like could you explain about Yext as well, so for people who don't know what Yext is?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people would, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. A lot of people seem to think of me as a technical SEO. That's amazing, because I have never, ever considered myself as a technical SEO. And I see that as like a status symbol, right? I finally graced the mighty halls of technical SEO, because those are always the guys that I looked up to for their just amazing knowledge. So I take the compliment, right? I'm very pleased. So yeah, I started in digital, I guess, circa 2010, 2011. I learned digital, or basically what online media was, through the wonderful world of MySpace back in the day of MySpace, which was awesome. I have so many fond memories of MySpace, to the point where everyone else was getting onto Facebook, and I was like the last person on MySpace, still editing my CSS and just making my page look awesome. So always loved that. I got into the music industry. My dad's a musician, and I've been in bands. I've managed bands. So I got into bands at the time where Facebook pages became a great way to get your band found online. I spent a long time working in social media, understanding how to create hype and become one of the sort of old school buzz guys that used to exist. And then I realized that actually underneath Facebook, there was something that was powering Facebook, i.e., it wasn't just the most recent thing that you see in the timeline. It's the thing that you aligns with what you want to see at that time the most. Hence, there is an algorithmic component to it. And I realized that actually you could hack that algo to get better views, better impressions, better visibility. And this was sort of as I was coming out of uni. And at the time, I didn't know that this whole world of digital existed. That this was still a hobby to me. I then went into business with a guy for a business that basically only lasted for about 6 months, did some digital PR for him, did some social media, etc. That was great fun. But coming out of that, I realized, well, actually, there's a career in this, and kind of fell into SEO that way. But back when I started, I was a link builder. I was an old school link builder. Came in just at the point where guest posting died and blogging was the key. So I started my career by reaching out to bloggers. I used to work at iCrossing, where we did a lot of work with the L'Oreal team. So it was creating digital PR campaigns for L'Oreal to then generate backlinks and all the SEO benefits that they used to bring. I then moved into paid search, did a load of paid search work for L'Oreal. Moved agencies, started doing more technical stuff. Went to work for a company called Crowd, really cool company. Those guys are doing some great stuff. Where I basically came in touch with a business called Regis, who you guys might know are an office space company. Worked for those guys for 2 years, kind of halfway between Crowd and Regis. So I was reporting into the CMO of the business, but at the same time still agency side. So yeah, it was really interesting. And quite an interesting prospect in terms of the product to sell and how people go about it. Because it was at the time where flexible working was coming in and co-working became a thing. And so it was equally as much an education of the consumer challenge as much as being found for things online. I then worked for a prospect. That was really cool. A couple of months working for them. And yeah, I'm now at Yext. I'm an SEO consultant at Yext. So at Yext, I've always worked with Yext for about the last 3 years as a partner and in various different sort of capacities. So I was really fortunate to go out and see their big event in New York in 2018 with this big event called Onward. And at Onward, our CEO talks about this brand new amazing product that was essentially a database where you could bring all your information together into one place, whether it was information on your people, your locations, your products, whatever it might be, and then do some really cool things with it. Create pages, answer questions on your own site. And so having seen that, where the business is going, I was like, well, that's where I think search is heading. So I really want to become a part of that. So yeah, I'm now at Yext. The company is that. It's a technology company that enables businesses to bring lots of important information together and then use that to improve how they're found online. Whether that's through managing location listings, whether that's through creating pages at scale, or through powering information on your own site so that people don't get wrong information. So yeah, that's a very long intro to me, but that's basically who I am.
There's so many questions. There's so many, so many good points off that. So it's really interesting to see how you started, from going from social, how hacking the algorithms to there, all the way to iProspect, and then from there going into Yext. So you missed the section where about the book that you co-authored. So how did that all come about? That's a big thing to miss out. How did that all come about? And I think you said we were speaking a lot off camera about it. So you said you enjoyed it a lot, and it was part of it was a large book, and you were really, it was a good thing for you to be involved in. So how did that all come about?
Yeah, so it's so the book Mastering In-House SEO. It's written by the guys at a company called Blue Array. Blue Array, again, business that I really respect and have been close to. Their CEO founder Simon, he's doing some great stuff. And ultimately, his team reached out because we've been working together. His team reached out to see if I'd be interested in contributing some ideas and information. It's a book for in-house people, and actually, when I talk about it, I'm drawing more from my agency experience than from my in-house experience. But the way I used to run teams at agency side was to basically supplant my own team into the client. So rather than be the agency that sit over here and they pass recommendations and ideas, actually try and get ourselves into the client's business so that we can affect change. Because recommendations are great, but if recommendations don't get deployed, then you don't see results, and the positive side of the work that you do doesn't happen. And often that's because of miscommunication between teams, lack of communication between teams, people not understanding what SEO is and how it impacts their day-to-day, but actually when you show them understanding the value that it can bring and just coordinating that part of it. And if you can take responsibility for that side, you can start to achieve some of the challenges, and so you can start to overcome some of the challenges and achieve the KPIs that you want to. So that's basically what I talk about in my chapter of the book. So yeah, that came about because those guys reached out and said, I've been close to those guys for some time, and I'm really pleased to be involved with it. It's an epic book. I highly recommend anyone that is interested read it. Some really, really, really good SEOs have written some very insightful chapters. And actually, it's not even just SEOs. There's a guy who I connected them with, called Neil Middlemass, who has been really important to my career. He's a recruiter, or he works in the recruitment industry. But I would say he's probably the smartest the smartest person in the recruitment industry I've ever met, but he's also just the most in touch person with everybody in the industry that I know. And his company, I think they're called Assembler, or Assemble. It's got a startup which is about sort of a recruitment tech platform. He's put out a big project which talks about how the London SEO market is segmented, how people move within the market. Are they in-house? Are they agency side? How long are they there for? What salaries? Great piece of research. He's contributed to the chapter as well. So if you're like an SEO, even if you're not in-house, even if you're agency side, and you just want to get some ideas and advice, this book's awesome. There's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, cool. Like that sounds really good. Like, so how do you think the shift's going? Like, I know that you mentioned it was like London data, but how do you see the shift? So are more companies take it, like, is it in, like, what's the kind of balance between in-house and it, being outsourced?
So it comes in cycles, and I've seen at least one complete cycle now throughout my career. It comes in cycles. So you have starts with large businesses putting their work with very large agencies, because those guys have the resources and the scale to negotiate the best contracts, the best deals with media owners, to innovate the most, and they're often seen as the place to go. And then after a while, that agency relationship just doesn't work out for whatever reason, and so the clients then start to in-house. And so what you'll find is big swathes of people start going in-house teams grow. And we saw that happen about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I actually worked shortly for Net-a-Porter for that very reason, because I was in-house as part of it. So that's a trend. And then when you're in-house, it's a very different vibe to when you're an agency. Everything you do is focused on driving revenue or to drive what the business wants you to do. And you have to account for most of the time you're doing. So it's not like being paid to work for someone where you are proving billable hours. It's, if you don't work, then you're not contributing to the wider effort. So it's like, it's not timesheeted, but you need to be working when you're there. And that's a whole different dynamic, but it means that you don't really see that much innovation unless the company is very, very forward thinking, and in the SEO industry, in the SEO case, really takes SEO seriously. So then you end up with the startings of outsourcing again, and it tends to be smaller agencies and specialists. So search will then be it might be that the SEO team wants to bring some new people and new ideas in, or doesn't have the resource to deliver a project, so they go out to an SEO specific agency, and then it goes back up to big networks, and then it goes back and round and round and round. What's really interesting with the last round of updates of movement that I've seen is, one, tends to be digital only channels that see this big shift. Media companies tend to put all their media spend with big agencies because they can negotiate a better rate. What we're now seeing with the rise of things like programmatic and more one-to-one marketing, even across things like video on demand, or even down to things like digital billboards, customers, large businesses are able to negotiate their own media contracts and direct with the media owners. And so the in-housing is to set up big teams that would typically sit with agencies. I don't think that's going to go back out again, but jury's out, and I don't know enough to really comment expertly on that part. But but on the SEO side specifically, what we've seen is, and this is in Neil's report, what we've seen is that there are far more people going from agencies to in-house than we are seeing come out of than in-house back to agencies. So every year there is a percentage of people that agencies are training up that are then going in-house, but there isn't that talent share back. Effectively, the agency world is bleeding a percentage of their staff every year. And that's changing the dynamic of the workspace. So people within agencies are asking for promotions a lot quicker, and their tenures tend to be a lot shorter. back when I started, I was told, you should only ever work for a company. You should never think about leaving a company before 2 years. Now, if you're an SEO executive, you've probably been in a company for no more than, say, 9 months before thinking about moving to your next role. That's a really big change, and it is shifting the dynamic of the industry quite a lot.
Yeah, I suppose there's always going to be like the ongoing, battle of like outsourcing and in-house, isn't there? There's pros and cons of both, and building a team inside a company and outsourcing, like the communication, for example, the ability to hire and fire on demand, that kind of thing. So there's always going to be pros and cons. Like as search is changing at the moment, is it more difficult for people to kind of, I mean, like, I don't know how much involved you are in, I guess, like the sales process, or were involved in the sales processes, but was the problem selling SEO over time? Like, was there a lot more convincing over time, as it's not always clear of case of the amount of keywords that are getting ranked, etc. So like it's harder and harder to kind of predict a return on an investment, isn't it? So like trying to pitch to a marketing officer or a CEO, is that getting more difficult over time, do you think?
I think it's the opposite, but there's a caveat to that. So now I work for a technology company where what we deliver is very clear. We have we have USPs, we have value, product, etc. Yeah. So we are a product. But to speak to my experience with the agency side, I would suggest it's harder. So I would suggest it's harder, but it depends. It was harder rather than it is now harder. But it doesn't always apply to every situation. I would say that search is becoming better understood at the senior level. So CMOs and CDOs and digital directors and marketing directors, it's now on their radar. And I think that's probably because of two reasons. One, it's very, very cost effective to run as a channel when you compare it to something like a big TV ad where you're spending a load of money and you don't know if you're going to get the return off of it, that you have no idea. So it is quite a cost effective channel. But it's also a brand consistency or brand messaging, or really important brand messaging as well. So if you are, let's say, I don't know, pick a random brand, let's say Coca-Cola, because I've got a Coca-Cola over here. If you're Coca-Cola, people before used to look at watch your TV ads and walk past your billboards to understand what you do and what's out there and ask questions and get a hint about the fact that you exist. Now they're going to online channels, so you can hit them with things like digital advertising, display ads, etc. To do that, you need to know about them, and you need to know lots about them to really be effective, and that's got challenges in its own right. But with search, you don't need to. You just need to have the right information. And with Google serving up direct answers in search, actually, there's more information about brands than ever. But it's not so much performance marketing as it used to be. It is more akin to brand marketing. So I think that's why it's getting the traction at the senior level. It's like, yes, it's a very cost-effective channel, but it's also a channel that can help nudge people on the journey in the way that some of the bigger mass reach above the line channels would have done, as well as all the great stuff we know that SEO does around performance marketing. So I think it's getting easier, but it really does seem to depend. And I know that's a buzzword that all SEOs use, but I use it all the time because it does. You think someone like let's use Coca-Cola as an example. They might go to a very large marketing agency with a multi-channel pitch. And so actually in that case, the reason why they're going to the agency is probably for the media capabilities and the buying capabilities and the strategic capabilities across all channels. And actually in that instance, SEO probably isn't a priority, but it is something they'll sell, that the agency would want to sell in as part of the overall contract. Probably discounted, if I'm honest with you, because it's seen as an important channel, but one that is the value add to the rest of the contract. That's a shift you definitely used to see more of. Now it's becoming more important to the main contract. That's very different to, for example, when you see clients and businesses engage with agencies for specific projects or single channel agencies, because then it's a very different dynamic. What I think is really cool at the moment is that smaller agencies that are very specialist, and do you know what? They're smaller in terms of overall headcount and market footprint, but they're probably not in terms of size of team for that channel. So a small agency might still have the same size SEO team as a network agency in an office, but they don't do all the other channels. That's where I think it's getting easier, because there's a very clear role responsibility, and you're going to them for their expertise and why they're doing it. You're going to the SEO agency to do the SEO work, which you know you need done. So you've kind of convinced yourself that you want to buy it. It's not a case of why or what, it's who.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like there's something I wanted to come to, and like that was like voice search. So like, how is it like trying to sell that as like the way that obviously it ranks through AI and things like that? How can you kind of like pitch that to someone when there's no like guarantee of getting ranked, and like how is that going to compete with Amazon eventually? So, you know, got an Alexa over there. So like, how can you kind of like future proof that? So say it's a big product. So like, how can you say that organically, eventually, so 5-10 years time, with how do you know that Amazon isn't going to be the paid result at the top? How can you kind of sell that? So eventually, like when you're asking a query in Alexa, it's going to come up with a sponsored product either by Amazon or Google. Like how would you get around that objection of as such?
So I don't. So firstly, I don't think it will. I think voice
Okay.
is one of these channels that is going to stay pretty open.
Okay.
I don't think you can monetize voice in the way that you can monetize text or visual search. Doesn't mean they won't try, but I don't think you can, because the sort of the motivation and the way that you consume information is very different to the mindset when you go to a search device, like when you do text-based search or visual search. When you've got text-based search, you've got lots of options. Now, Google will still give you the answer, but you're going in a mindset of options. With voice, you're getting one answer, and that's the answer. So to provide sponsored results on top of that means they would have to not provide the answer, hence reduce the legitimacy of the answer they do provide, hence people stop using it because it's not what they want. So I think that's more of a challenge. I think that's something you'll see less of in the future rather than more of. But I actually do think that voice is such an interesting one. It's a bit like content about 5 years ago. It's become the buzzword and it's become the buzz thing. I don't know a single market. I like working with agencies, every presentation talks about voice. I have a very different view to voice than most people. And I think when you start looking into the voice in a bit more detail, you start looking at how voice is powered, and then start comparing that to how other digital channels are powered and how just search as a whole is powered. You start to realize that the things that we think we need to do to answer voice queries are no different to the things we need to do to be found in as a direct answer in Google search or in the 10 blue links in that format. It's just that the interface, the bit that the user interacts with, is just different, right? So let's just break it down, right? The anatomy of a modern search device is three things. There's the UI, which is the user interface. So for voice, it's the bit you talk to. For screen, it's the bit you type into. If we get to smart glasses in the future, it'll be the bit you look through. By the way, check out Apple for that. They are definitely coming with something. Just got to be. So there's that. That's the first bit. You then go one level deeper and you get machine learning. And machine learning is the bit that works out what is relevant, what is the person asking. There is, if it's a Google result with 10 blue links, which is the ordering of the blue link, and should we show a direct answer over a people also ask box? That's the machine learning bit. And then underneath the machine learning bit, you've then got the knowledge base. And the knowledge base is the bit that is the fundamental part. That's the bit that we can impact. So if we want to get found in voice search, actually, if we want to get found in search at all, whether that's across Amazon, Facebook, Google, it doesn't really matter. We need to be impacting the knowledge part of it, i.e. making sure that search engines have knowledge on what we do and are confident in us in that kind of knowledge that we're providing. You do that, everything else doesn't really matter. But to the point around agencies doing it badly or generally just not really understanding how voice works, which is, I didn't say that explicitly, but that's kind of where I stand on this. Often you see people optimizing for voice queries. So we are going to do a strategy for you. And the strategy is going to be, we're going to Google questions and we're going to create questions for you. We can do that, right? That's helpful. But think about it this way. When you ask the questions into a voice device, they're going to give you an answer. When you answer that question, the first thing that they often do is ask the question, did I answer your question? Now, think about it this way. Machine learning systems underneath deciding what is right and wrong, right? If you say yes or no, you have fundamentally changed the results, not only for yourself, but for everybody else that asked that question, because the machines will take that feedback and then use it in some way to make the system better. If you're trying to optimize for specific queries in that way, and you're not thinking about it from a data perspective and a data management perspective, like let's say that user A says no, that's it, you're done as far as that strategy is concerned. focus on building information, you don't just answer that question, you can answer a whole host of questions that you never knew you could answer. And because it's a database, it's information, it stands the test of, you might be the wrong information that moment of time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, voice is obviously, it is obviously the future, isn't it? But like, what else can businesses and brands, what can they do to, obviously voice is only one part of the future, but what can businesses and companies do to kind of future proof the websites for not only for voice, but for search in general? What actionable steps can people take to kind of future proof the website? And I know that there's the basic core principles that you mentioned, the 3 principles. What can people do to kind of make sure that the website's going to continually be, first of all, in line with the Google's recommendations, but also what kind of predictions would you be able to make, like, based on the patterns? I was watching another video that you're involved in, and there's updates every 100 days or so. So, like, I think you mentioned it might be August. Is there any predictions or anything that you can see coming up?
So yeah, that was a video I did a week or so ago around the latest core update.
Yeah. Could you
what was really explain?
Would you be able to explain a little bit more about the most recent core update? I think it was it 5th of May, something like that?
It was May time, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so firstly, updates. Everyone has an understanding of what they think an update is when it comes to search. Because we're so used to the old school view of updates being penguin or panda, a specific thing that improves search's ability to do this other thing. So penguin, the ability of search to understand if a link that comes from one site to yours is good or bad, is valuable or not. Or panda, whether the content you put out is of a certain standard. That was great. And those updates were fun as hell, right? They changed search overnight, but they were very manual. They were a manual recalibration of the way that the ranking systems worked that then got rolled out. But we're now in a world where this all happens real time, right? This all happens, and people dispute whether it happens in real time or not, but it's all machine learning, and that's the bit that's important. It's always constantly learning from what it serves back. Now, what core updates are non-specific, non-specified, broad updates that search engines make to or that Google specifically makes to its system. Lots of people look at core updates and go, what does it target? What is it doing? What does it impact? Personally, I don't think it impacts anything specific. In fact, I personally believe that a core update is Google has a model that it's taught to do something one way. But and that's the main model, the main search system that we're constantly engaging with. On the side, Google has a couple of other models that it's constantly training and recalibrating and doing a different thing to. And when it sees one that is doing really, really well, it starts to open it up to more information and more data. And finally, when it gets to the point where this machine learning system provides better results than the current one, they merge it over. They make it part of the main system. Now, the frequency of these core updates does feel a little bit like a quarterly software release. So every quarter, big software companies tend to put out new features and information, and new functionality. So it does feel a little bit like that. But that might just be circumstantial. That is definitely a correlative argument than a causative argument at this point.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was Gary Ilsh, who's one of the guys at Google, he came out with a point where he says, when I think about the core algo, or when I think about the core update, I'm talking about the IR scorers. The IR being the information retrieval scorers, the bit that works out what information is relevant to pull back to users. So if that's the case, which I have no reason to doubt, it's aligned with my theory, it's not a ranking thing, right? It's not well, it is, but it's not like you can go out and say that Google now devalues links by 200. It's a really broad thing that is recalibrating the machine learning that sits at the heart of search. So that's what I think this update was, and what I think's happened, and what that means. But one thing you see with all these updates, and the latest announcement from Google, which I think, like, to me felt like like, you remember the albums, like the now That's What I Call Music, that were like compilations of the best hits that had happened in previous months, previous years, right? This update, this UX update feels like a Google's like latest Now That's What I Call Music update. Because if you read all the different points, they have talked about most of them in the past and have confirmed that they are things that they care about. Of course they are. They're great things that derive great experiences for users, right? So in terms of future-proofing your website, in terms of what I think is going to happen in the future, there's really three areas I'd focus on. I like to do things in threes, so I'm going to keep doing things in threes. But there are three areas I'd focus on. One is that Google at its core is getting eroded. Google's market share at its core is getting eroded away. Now, it's not getting eroded away because there's a really big competitor that is absolutely destroying them. It's in this specific vertical, in this niche, there are other systems. Who goes to a taxi company more? Who doesn't just Uber? Who goes to a takeaway? Who doesn't just Deliveroo or Just Eat? You know, that's the thing, right? Google's getting slightly eroded away. And the way that Google can combat that is to provide amazing experiences for users, both within Google and whenever people go on from Google. So everything that we see in search is focused around that. And that's going to continue and continue and continue. So first thing you can do is, if Google is going to return you as a result to people, make sure that your site is awesome, right? Make sure that it's fast, that people have a great time on it, that you're not just making the load experience horrendous so that people have to sit there on their mobile in 3G waiting for it to happen. Like, all really good stuff that make users happy. How do you know you're doing it well? Well, go to your website and pretend you're someone that, pretend that it's not your website, and see if you get frustrated within 5 minutes about how it loads. It's a really great example. If you do, you're probably not doing it right. That's the first thing.
You can hire your grandparent as well to make sure that it's, you know,
I love
easy
that.
to use.
Such a great idea, man. Yeah, absolutely. Get your grandparent to do it. If they can't figure out how to get to tell them, I need you to get to this product, right? If you're an e-com site, I need you to get to this product. If they can't do it in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, then there's probably a problem there. Okay. And that's a really, really sort of, I love that idea. That's great. I'm going to do more user testing that way.
Well, there's also the it's called KISS, so the anagram KISS. So keep it stupid simple, or keep it simple, comma stupid. I like to use that one as well, or the grandparent technique.
Absolutely. But I think that's one thing that people when they think about search, they just over engineer everything. It's, we need to have this keyword on this page to rank. No, just focus on the users. That's the best thing you can do, right? So great experience, step one. Step two, make sure your information architecture, the way that your site is structured, the information you are providing to search engines is logical, makes sense. Make sure that you're making it really easy for people to understand what you're talking about and how that relates back to the other things. If you're a business in a certain location and you have 5 things that you offer, have a page for those 5 things. Make sure that links back to the main page that you're doing. Just reduce that level of ambiguity and make sure that search engines really understand what you do. Because if they're going to return you back, they need to be confident that, one, you are a great place to go, but also that you have good information for them. And then finally, there's this idea of, this is a future prediction, and it's a great, I think it's such an interesting topic. But search engines, the idea of the web as a network. So the web is a network. What I mean by a network, I mean different points that are connected together. Your brain is a network. Your brain has these things called neurons. I'm going to get it so wrong now. You have these things called neurons. These neurons have the bits where the information is stored, and they connect together. And they connect together points called synapses, and that's the bit where chemicals are transmitted from one place to another. And when your brain wants to do something, when your body wants to do something, a neuron will light up, pass its signal to all the neurons around it. And if they all feel the same way, parts of your brain light up, and that's what drives you to do something, to blink, to speak, whatever it might be. The web is a bit like that. In fact, the fact that the web is like that is why search engines work the way they work. Think about links, right? All links are connections between documents. They are just the points of connection between the neurons in your brain that link documents together, right? So why were links always important? Because if all of these things around you light up and point that back to you, you might have a better chance of lighting up. Who knows, right? That's the concept. There's a great book by a guy called Jeff Steibel, or Steeple, I can't remember his surname, called Breakpoint. And there's an idea in Breakpoint that all networks, when they get to a certain size, hit what they call a breakpoint, which is a point where the network cannot sustain it. It can't grow anymore. It can't get bigger. And that's either because the network doesn't have the resources to continue powering itself, or it's because the connections are so numerous that there's no value in the single points of connection anymore. What we're seeing in search right now is that we are getting closer and closer and closer to the web's breakpoint. There's so much content and information out there that search engines have to consume it to understand what's out there. And when you get to a point of breakpoint, you have to think about how you change the game. So you either have to have better ways of processing or more efficient systems or new systems to make things better. And what we're seeing with search is the things like natural language understanding. So search engines' ability to understand meaning from text, from spoken word as well. That's helping them understand and parse things, understand things in sort of better, in more volume. But we are getting to the point where there's more information out there than we can see coping with. And look, one of the simplest things that you guys can do to future-proof yourself for search and just really start to capture the value from today is to start making search engines' life easy for basic points of information, or use a language called structured data on your site. So you've probably heard something called schema markup. Schema markup is a scheme. It's a type of structured data. Use that on your pages, describe them in the way that the machines can really truly understand, but also removes the hassle of having to go in and find that out for themselves. You can do that. You are going to set a fantastic foundation for information building, which of course is the future of search in my mind.
There's something I wanted to touch on. So obviously, like we spoke on link building and SEO for larger brands, but like from a local SEO point of view, what are some of the best practices? I know obviously tools like Yext is really important for citations, that kind of thing, but from a link building point of view, or I guess like a general point of view, what is there any tips or suggestions that you've got for local SEO? I know there's specific location pages and things like that, citations, but is there anything specifically you can do for link building for a local site?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, we at Yext do a lot more than citations. Definitely where we came from as a business, but we're doing things like site search now and crazy cool stuff. So here's the thing, right? This is what I think is really interesting. If you look at who are popular local SEO people in the industry, all the popular SEO people in the industry are now all talking about this thing called entity-based search. Okay, which is the idea that Google doesn't understand things in terms of documents, but in terms of the things they are. So it understands that a business is a business, and that a hairdresser is a hairdresser, and that a location is a location, and it understands it in the way that we do, and the connections between it. Again, a network, just another example of a network. And it's funny that most of the SEO, like local SEO community, are sort of talking about it, because actually, I don't think it's, sorry, it is funny, but I don't think it's crazy to believe that, because actually local SEO has always been the way that entity-based search has worked. Really what you're doing is you're building an online presence for your location, and you're having to convince the search engine that you are open, that you are accurate, that your information is accurate, so that if they give it to someone, they'll find it, and that you're actually a good place to go for that person's needs. So the whole idea of citations, well, that's about consistency of information. That's about making sure that you have a clean data sheet out in the web, so that whenever people find you, whenever search engines go to find you, they trust the information. You've got things like direct integrations for Google My Business and local pages and all the information and services you put information to. It's about building out the knowledge that the search engine has on what you do and how you do it. And then finally, you've got things like reviews, and reviews can tell the search engine things like, hey, if people are going there and having an experience, clearly they're open rather than closed. If people are saying the place has got great Wi-Fi and the site doesn't mention Wi-Fi, clearly the place has got great Wi-Fi, and vice versa. So I would suggest that for local businesses, so there's really, again, there's a couple of points here. One, don't fake it. If you're a local business, you're a local business. Just maximize what you're doing in the area, because with that comes your online presence. That's point one. Point two, make sure your information is consistent. If you've got a place to put a telephone number, make sure the telephone number is the telephone number of your business. Don't put your mobile number in one day and your telephone, like, just make sure you've got a consistent thing. That's really because, think about this example, right? If you go to your mates and you want to go to a restaurant for dinner, and you say, hey guys, where can I go for dinner? And they all go, and you know where you want to go, but you don't know where it is. You're like, hey, where's this new burger restaurant? And they give you like 20 different options or 20 different addresses. You're not going to go there because you don't know where it is. If they all turn around and go, it's on 12 King Street, you're going to go, I am going to go there because I now know where it is. Same principle. So that's the consistency of information. And then just be a really good business. Like I people, when they talk about search, they're always looking for the hacks and the ways to get around it. But in local SEO, there is nothing better than just being a genuinely good business, listening to your customer feedback, responding to your customer feedback and taking it on board, using that to improve what you do, and then building this better customer base online. because people will go and talk about you online. They will share you on their favorite sites. They will add reviews to your website, and that all helps and informs the search engine on whether you actually are worthy of being returned. So yeah, like it all distills down to what we talked about earlier: deliver a great user experience. If you deliver a great user experience, it's just this case it's offline rather than online. Everything else follows.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like it just goes back to the point of just, thinking of the user first, and then, in turn you'll get taken care of by Google. So like we obviously have mentioned Yext, and we've mentioned like the citations feature, but I know that's only like a small part of Yext. So would you be able to go into a little bit more detail for us about what else you do at Yext? I know you said like a site search as well. Was that right? Would you be able to just like go into a little bit more detail about what you guys do at Yext?
Yeah. So the world is currently, so a current fact of the world right now is that when people go online, they're looking for answers, they're looking for information, and regardless of how, where, or when they look for it, they are becoming used to getting information directly back. So you go to Google, you ask a question, you get an answer. You don't typically go to a website for that information. Now you get that answer direct, and that happens across Facebook, across voice search, all these different places. That also happens on websites. It's just that websites as well, typically the search bar is not great. It still gives blue links. It's just not a good user experience.
Yeah.
So the premise of Yext is to deliver perfect answers everywhere. It's to enable brands to bring the information that they have into a central place. So we call that place the knowledge graph, and do things with that information in order to deliver what we call brand verified answers. So making sure that when someone comes to Google, that Google has the information that Google needs to provide that answer back to that person in search. When it comes to your brand, or in fact just outside of it. And we do that with three different activations products. Listings is one, which is where we distribute information in that knowledge graph to various different third parties, huge publisher network of location businesses and event businesses. So people like Google, Facebook, Bing. We've got a direct connection with Amazon's Alexa. We're powering information to Amazon, and that side of things. We then use the information to spin up pages at scale. And when we spin up pages at scale, what we mean is we've got we have in-house developers, and we ultimately handle the technical SEO component of those pages. So we make sure they're fast, we make sure they're mobile friendly, we make sure they're responsive, all the great stuff that you need without having to hire a developer to then go on and do that for you. And then finally, the really cool bit and the most sort of interesting part is that, in my mind, the newest product is we then take that information and use it to answer questions on your own website. So we provide a search engine-like experience on your own website. So when someone comes into it and says, I don't know, what time does your London store close, or how much is a pair of sneakers? You'll have an answer rather than direct them to a list of blue links, which doesn't get them to engage, doesn't get them to convert, doesn't help anyone. We give them the information and a conversion button to get them to drive that next action.
I was looking at there was a post on LinkedIn. It was a Social Chain's new website. So essentially they kind of scrapped the conventional kind of website. So it was more of a conversational kind of website. So you landed on the page and then you typed in questions, and then it was basically just a bot you were talking to. From your point of view, like what do you think about that? I know that like what do you think about that from from a content point of view? You don't have any content to go off of. You just essentially got code on a page, and unless you're building links to it, there's not really much else Google can pick up from it. So can you see the future in any kind of conversational websites, purely conversational websites? I presume it'll work well for some type of websites, but to initially get organic traffic, I can't imagine that a web page without any content on it will get ranked at all. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think the Social Chain are doing some very, very cool stuff. They're a very forward-thinking agency that are operating in the social space, right? I think people that want to work with Social Chain know who they are, and they do a lot of big brand media. People know the brand name, so they are going to rank for their brand name. I don't think they need to worry about connecting with people through organic, because I imagine most of the businesses they work with are large-scale businesses who know who they are. And in that case, the fact that they've got this website that's all about conversation, and if their message from a social media perspective is keeping that brand conversation, it demonstrates their message, their ethos very, very well. But that's the thing, like the purpose of that website, I highly doubt is for organic search. I fundamentally would believe it's for that brand value, that brand experience, which if people are coming to them direct, that's what they want to deliver. That's great for those guys. And fair enough. And there are formats like progressive web apps that are more interactive, that are halfway houses between traditional websites and new websites. JavaScript websites, Google's getting much better at parsing JavaScript content. So there is more of an interactive dynamic feel to it. And of course, I haven't seen the social chain website, so I don't know what else they're doing on the page, etc., to define that. But one thing you do find is that that's great for people like social chain that they have customers that come directly to them. Going back to the example, if you're Coca-Cola, yes, you have an amazing brand presence. People know who you are, but people start asking questions about you, and you need to be the answer to that question, right? If someone asks how much sugar in a Coca-Cola, or what is how many calories in a Coca-Cola, you need as Coca-Cola to be the answer. And the thing with the web at the moment is that that's not always the case. If the brand isn't providing search engines this information, they're not answering these questions. Google isn't just going to return a random Coca-Cola page as a result because it's the best possible, because it's the brand. They're going to go out, look at all the information that's out there, and they're going to find an answer from somewhere else. And so actually, to bring it all the way back to what we talked about, I can't remember if we talked about this on this call or if we talked about it off camera, but talk about media being and search being about physical and mental availability. So mental, I'm thirsty, I want to buy a Coke. So I see a big billboard and that prompts me. Physical, I want to go into a store. Oh, look, there's a Coke in front of me, so I'm going to pick that up off the shelf. Two typically work together. Search has traditionally been seen as the physical side, where people have seen it, they search for it, and you're there. With answers in search and people using search as the start of the journey more often, we're seeing it hit more on the brand side, which is a totally different way of thinking about search. So in this instance, social chain, they're doing their brand stuff really cool. Like every single person on that team has an amazing following on social, which you would expect as a business that does social media. I mean, you'd hope that would be the case. But that's to me probably how they're doing the majority of their lead gen, or through other ways. So when people land on the site, it's that cool experience, it brings the ethos. If you're Coca-Cola, however, and you need to make sure that people can get information on you, I don't think that sort of experience is going to work unless it's for a promotional campaign where you're driving TV or ads to it. That's so yeah, works for those guys. Do I think it's going to work for every business? No. Do I think that a really great experience on a website, if that is a great experience, again, I haven't seen it. No, I think that's helpful. Yes, of course, because that's what Google wants to provide. Yeah, totally depends on the situation. So yeah, that's two it depends counts in this call so far.
Yeah, so it is, I guess it's just down to the situation of the company. So like, it is subjective. So yeah, it does depend. So yeah, we've been on the call for about an hour now. So like, I guess just wanted to find out a little bit more about you, just for the audience, so they can find out a bit about you. So like at Yext, like what's like a typical day for you? I know you're probably on a lot of calls around, well, obviously working from home at the moment, so you're obviously on calls all day every day, but even when you're in the office, you're on calls a lot to different countries, or like what's a typical day for Ric Rodriguez?
I don't think there is a typical day, if I'm honest. Every day's, so I absolutely, and firstly, I'm involved in lots of different things at Yext. I sit within our sort of product and technical expert team, the solutions consultancy team. But I sit there as a search expert, and I do lots of things within that. And what that means is I get exposed to lots and lots of different parts of the business, whether that might be helping our corp strategy guys understand, what's great and important to search people and generate sort of what should be our next big product kind of thing, all the way through to going and meeting customers, whether that's in the UK or abroad. So there isn't really a typical day. And I think as someone that personally, I get bored quite quickly with routine. I like to continuously be challenged and try new things. I kind of love it that way. But I mean, there are some things that have regularity. So, for example, every morning I will start my day by looking at the search magazines. I call them magazines, but you know what I mean. Search Engine Land, Search Engine Watch, and go onto Twitter to see if I've missed anything from the night before. If I have, then I'll try and, if it's useful to my colleagues, then I will share it and I'll talk to them about it. that's probably a point of regularity that regardless of where I am in the world, I will always try and do, because at least then there's some, even if I can't remember what country I'm waking up in, there's still a point of that regularity. That being said, post coronavirus, post working from home, I definitely see the appeal of working from home and routine and doing more of that. Yes, I'm on a Zoom call every day, but I'm also talking to people a lot. I'm meeting people and I'm getting to speak to people I wouldn't normally get a chance to speak to. So I know I started off the call by saying Zoom, sort of starting off this podcast by saying Zoom fatigue, but yeah, it is different, but I don't dislike it. I think it's good. I think it's good. But I'm missing our office. I'm missing going into London. I never thought I'd say I miss the tube, but I absolutely do miss the tube. And yeah, it's weird, but it's also quite interesting.
Definitely. I know you mentioned a lot about the traveling as well, and you know, you said that you do a lot of traveling. Did you say you've been on 15 flights this year?
Yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah, so it's obviously like a big perk, isn't it? So like, but I guess at the same time, there's a lot of things that you don't see behind the scenes as well. You know, when you first started out like 10 years ago, did you see yourself doing these kind of things, like working, you know, around, where was it, Berlin? Where have you been? Where have you been this year, Connor? What did you say?
I've been a lot around Europe. So I've been to the Netherlands, I've been to Germany, I've been to Sweden. Stockholm's a wonderful city. But yeah, I never thought that this would be something I do. And I mean, even just like going abroad to do conferences and that kind of thing, that's something I never thought I'd ever get a chance to do, let alone three years ago, let alone sort of 10 years ago. So that's been really, really awesome. I think the thing with business travel is it's one of these things that when you get into it, so I'm missing traveling because I love going, I do like going abroad. I think for me, the main perk, the wonderful thing I love about business travel is not the going on a plane and getting all this, because that's just, it's like getting on a bus now, you know, it's like getting on a train to work when you do it that much. But it really is. It's kind of like that, but worse, because you have to take your clothes off every time to go through passport security. But it's like, it's awful, man. But I love going out and meeting people from different cultures, right? Because, you know, you when you start going out and meeting different groups of people, you realize that the way that people do things and the way that people see things in France, in Germany, in Sweden are very different to the way perhaps you see it in the UK. And it's not that it's different because and therefore bad. It's different and therefore I want to learn from it. I want to see what else, you know, what good I can take away or just experience it. So I love the international travel from that side. I'm also not, I mean, obviously I try to keep down travel as much as I can. If I don't have to travel, I won't. I'm all about the carbon footprint and offsetting and that kind of thing. But sometimes there's a lot of goodness that can be derived from meeting someone face to face. And so I wouldn't go over for a half an hour conversation, but when you can go and meet someone and spend a couple of hours with them or a day with them and really get to understand who they are and what they do, it does make for a much better business relationship. Like forget what I do for a living, just generally, whether that's internationally or in the UK. And I think I love the fact that Zoom is connecting people. I love that Zoom's taken off because I think Zoom does achieve the same thing. It's not quite the same as being in the same room as someone, but you know, it is good. I never do a Zoom call without, I try not to do a Zoom call now without my camera on, even if the other person hasn't got a camera, because I think there is that intrinsic human connection that can be made. But yeah, so I do like business travel. I think it's very, I think the traveling part feels a little bit, does just feel like a bit of a commute when you start to do it more often than not. But the difference is you then wake up in Sweden and there's a whole different vibe to the culture. And when you wake up, you see people doing these things that you wouldn't typically see. And that's awesome. Like that's just second to none.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like I guess it's all part of it, isn't it? And like, you know, if you look back when you know retired, like you wish you took it, you know, when you were a lot younger. So like, it's good that you're getting to see the world, and you don't have to pay for it yourself. Like when you're going, you know, when you're going with work, etc. So you know, you're really lucky to be able to travel. So yeah, I think we should wrap it up here. So like, what's next for you? Like, what have you got going on at the moment? I know that you obviously released your book, and you want to, you know, get as many people in-house to read it as possible. So yeah, what else have you got on? And the webinar OMR is coming up soon, so people can check it there. But is there anything else?
I'm doing some stuff with a company called Conductor. So they're another SEO platform. I'm doing a webinar talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the online world, and that's with one of their guys, Patrick. He's really smart and really someone I look up to. So yeah, that's gonna be really good. And then I don't know, like right now everything is so up in the air. Everything is so uncertain that who knows what we'll be doing. What I think there's definitely, so I'm a couple of things I'm really sort of I've got coming up that I'm really quite proud of. I'm judging a load of awards, so I can't wait to see some amazing work from the different businesses out in the UK. But I'm also head judge. I've been invited to be head judge for the Digital Growth Awards. So if anyone operates in the CRO, UX, SEO, or just wider search world, and wants to submit for that award, I highly recommend you do. It's a fantastic award event, and it's a prestigious award. So I'm really glad to be a part of that team. So that's coming up later this year, and as I say, there's conferences to Digital Elite. That's happening in September now, I think, following coronavirus. There's always stuff happening, but yeah. I mean, Twitter's always the best place to find out from me. LinkedIn's always the best place to find out what I'm up to.